Welcome back to another episode of ROC Boys Football. Continuing our 2022 season previews. Up next, we got Kansas State. There's a lot of optimism around this Kansas State program, obviously, with the transfer of Adrian Martinez. Chris Kleiman coming into his third season after going 8-5, then having kind of a down year in that COVID year 4-6. Then coming off a strong 8-5 season with a very, very good win against kind of a depleted LSU team. Dill, let's start with that offensive side of the ball. How are we feeling about Kansas State and that quarterback there?
I mean, if you ask me honestly, I'm guessing Skylar Thompson, Adrian Martinez, you're just not going to notice a huge difference.
Yep.
Both kind of your prototypical productive college football quarterback, but not NFL level on either end, in my opinion. So I think you're going to see very similar play, which is nice because honestly, Skylar Thompson was fairly good last year. So I think it's good to have a guy who's going to play a similar style and give you a similar amount of game, I think.
Absolutely. And I think having a NFL-ready quarterback at the college level is kind of overrated. Like, we see a lot of really good NFL quarterbacks. They're not like the top end, like Bryce Young, Trevor Lawrence guys. Like, a lot of the best college quarterbacks aren't necessarily the best draft prospects because you have to win with your legs. And that's a way better asset in college than it is at the NFL level. And one other thing, Colin Klein coming in as the new OC at Kansas State.
Perfect fit for Martinez because Martinez needs to play the way Colin Klein plays.
Yes.
And he needs to win the way Colin Klein won because he's not the pure pocket passer to do it that way, nor was Colin Klein, obviously, but he was an excellent college quarterback. So
and they also
I think
struggle
this
with
might
the
give him
same
a
thing
chance
too.
to thrive. Yeah.
Like Adrian Martinez, you got to limit the turnovers the last couple of years. Colin Klein definitely struggled a little bit. I think it was last season he had 9 interceptions. So guys that play similarly, I think he's a great mentor. He's a nice, young, energetic coach that Adrian Martinez, no doubt, is very excited to play for. Again, you noted a lot of similar skill sets that those two guys have. So that's a really exciting look for that quarterback. I do think Adrian Martinez is kind of similar to a Skylar Thompson. So you're not really expecting much of a drop-off, which is nice for Kansas State as well. Got to get to the supporting cast around him, starting with one of the more electric running backs in the country in Deuce Vaughn. Been looking at him through like the 2023 NFL draft lens, and he's getting slept on a little bit as like he just doesn't have the prototypical frame. Like, he is really short. He's really short. And that might not translate at the next level that well.
But he runs well behind his pads, and he's like a pretty capable inside back. Guys are short, whatever. He's not a giant either, but he's lightning quick, and he gets upfield.
Yes.
He's not a dancer. He gets upfield. He gets the yards he should get, and that really helped Kansas State last year. He obviously was a big, probably the leader of that offense.
And you said it best. Like, he does run low behind his pads. Part of the benefits of being that short is you have that low center of gravity. You can be the low man. And he does run physically. He's a physical runner for his height. So there's a lot. I mean, he's a top 5 running back in the country.
I want to see him in space more. I think Kansas State kept him too much running in between the tackles, but the quickness and the ability to make guys miss and quickly and get going, I think he could have reeled off some really big play or been more productive, getting a little more touches outside. Because I think when you looked at it, when he took some of those halfback draws, like on long third downs, like that's when you saw him really be electric. When
he's in space, making
open for a little bit,
making defenders at the second level miss. That's when he's at his best.
I hope they get him into some swings, some screens, some other ways to try to find him.
The ball 25, 30 times a game. I think that's the recipe for Kansas State to have a really efficient and effective and explosive offense. And I wouldn't mind seeing some more RPOs too. Simplify the game for Adrian Martinez. Let him have the ability to use his legs. He's one of the better athletic quarterbacks in the country. And then obviously letting Deuce Vaughn cook a little bit too. Getting to their outside receivers, I wouldn't say it's like it's certainly not one of the best in the Big 12 when you think about teams like Texas. But it's capable. I mean, a guy like Malik Nozick, you can see him on the field. He has the potential to bust off some big plays. Like, he's a very explosive guy. Like to see him also kind of get vertical a little bit more. I think that's where he thrives the most. What are your kind of thoughts on those outside receivers?
Yeah, I don't mind the combo of Malik Knowles and Phillip Brooks. Phillip Brooks more the slot kind of style guy, a little shorter, a little bit more of a short runner. But Malik Knowles, like when you see him running, I mean, he took a jet sweep against Oklahoma. You just saw the explosiveness. You saw the speed.
Yes.
Good size. So I think he's a guy who can really become a really productive wideout. And he was good last year. So I'm not trying to say he's like, but I'm thinking more like a breakout into a legit NFL kind of talent. So I think it is good, nice to have him.
What I think about that offense in general and the offensive weapons they have, and this is one of probably the reasons why they're bringing in a new OC, is I didn't think they have talented guys on the offense side of the ball. Like whether it's Skylar Thompson, Deuce Vaughn, Malik Knowles, they're a talented group. I didn't think those players were put in the spot for them to best thrive. Kind of something that Michigan struggled with a couple of years with their OCs. Like you have these guys with certain skill sets. You have to figure out ways to get those guys in places and spots in the field where they can best display their best skill sets. And I didn't think that was happening last year at Kansas State. Colin Klein, I think that hopefully it happens a little bit more, and that's what you got to look for. Looking at their offensive line, they're not returning the 3 interior guys, but from what I've been reading, they have guys who they're pretty comfortable having coming in that plug and play in the guard and center spot. Then they're returning their 2 tackles. It shouldn't be a bad unit, but it's not one of the best units in the Big 12 either. But it's not a lie.
Yeah, and it wasn't like elite last year. Probably won't be elite this year. But when you get 2 starting tackles back, that's always nice, obviously.
Yes, and that's probably obviously the most important position on the field on that offensive line. Let's take a look at this defense. This defense was very fickle. You watched the Oklahoma and Baylor game. I watched the Baylor game, and I watched a couple other Kansas State games as well. My biggest takeaway for Kansas State is when they're playing with their heads on fire a little bit, when you're letting Daniel Green, one of the best linebackers in the Big 12 and country, in my opinion, when you're letting him cook, get downfield, get behind the line of scrimmage, I think that's when they're at their best. When they're at their worst, they're running that rush 3, drop 8, really soft zone and kind of just getting spliced up a little bit. That's kind of my takeaway. You had some more
well, they got to tackle people. Like, they weren't a great tackling team. I think you saw in the Oklahoma State game, they rattled off some big plays. Oklahoma rattled off some big plays. QB runs hurt them badly. So there's just like it's just being more solid because there is some talent, albeit it's a little thin on defense. Like their defensive line is really going maybe 4 deep, and then the rest of them you didn't really have any idea what they're going to be. So
yeah, and
that combo with the fundamentals and just being solid and like playing to their potential, kind of every snap kind of situation, I think it could be pretty solid. I don't think it's going to be a great unit, but good enough for the Big 12 where if they can score some points, they'll be tough.
Yeah, and starting at that defensive line, that's where I like to look the most when it comes to looking at teams and evaluating how they're going to be on defense. Georgia was one of our favorite teams last year, and they were so good because they could get after the passer with only rushing 4 guys. Having guys like Trayvon Walker, Devontae Wyatt, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, guys who can get after the passer, create havoc. That's how you get turnovers. That's how you have a successful and explosive defense. You obviously have to look to Felix, and I'm hopefully get his name right. Felix, Anudike Ozama. I listened to that a couple times. I hope I didn't totally butcher it. He's He's one of the best edge defenders in the country. I mean, he's looking at to be like a first-round draft pick next year.
It always hurts me when these teams with good edge rushers play the 3-man defensive line front because it's just hard for a guy like Felix to get loose because he's always getting doubles. It's very easy to just to kind of double team him or chip him or do things.
Yeah.
So I wish they'd let him play on the edge where I feel like he'd be most effective. But in fairness, they do an okay job blitzing and getting after quarterbacks with not just beating guys one-on-one pass rush, but blitzing and creating havoc. So
that's one of the most important aspects of when you're running that 3-man front. Like you can kind of get some exotic blitzes going. You can kind of put that quarterback and put that offense, get them confused. You're not really sure who's going to come from where. But Felix is a guy that has the ability to take over a game. Really, really good using his hands to get off blocks. He can bend like the best of them. I mean, he just gets right below tackles and gets after the quarterback.
My biggest defender too.
Yes, my biggest question mark, and he was only a true sophomore last year, so you're expecting another jump. He's not like a redshirt senior who's capped. Like this dude could get way better than what we saw him last year.
Yeah.
One of the things I'm looking for is who else is going to step up. Like you look at that stat sheet, he was the only guy with over, I think, 5 sacks. And he had 11. So, like, is there going to be another guy on that defensive side of the ball that can get in the backfield and create some pressures, can create some negative plays. Because, again, that's what's the most important aspect of a defense.
Yeah, they're losing some production at that defensive line spot. Number 98, number 90 last year were both really good players, and they're not back. So,
yeah,
there's some holes to fill for sure. And it's not like they were bringing in a ton of transfers on that particular part of the team. So, I think some just because they didn't play last year doesn't mean they're not good. I think Jalen Pickle didn't play a ton, but had some good moments. So, we'll see.
Look for guys to step up. That's going to be the question mark. And you noted it, the depth. Now, getting to the linebacker spot, I mentioned Daniel Green earlier. I mean, when you said it, you said it best. Like, when they're playing aggressive, that's when I feel like their defense is at their best. And when he's playing aggressive, that's when he's at his best. Like, he can fly around like some of the best linebackers in the country. He piqued my interest for the 2023 NFL draft. Like, he put him immediately on my board after watching me against Baylor because he flies around the field. I like his game a lot. Reached out to my girlfriend's dad, who's a big Nebraska fan, to check up on Will Honus, who's coming in as a transfer. All reports are he will be a solid linebacker for you. He's not going to be anything special, but if he can just be a solid running mate for Daniel Green, kind of balance him out.
Gotta stay on the field, though.
Yes, that was the biggest thing he said.
Will Honus, honestly.
Yeah, you got to stay healthy and he's got to be able to stay on the field. Obviously, your best ability is your availability. I think
but it's a good transfer for them to get because they were losing obviously number 55 something Fletcher. I forget his first name.
Cody Fletcher. But yeah, he's a good ball
player. Good play. Not great, but good. And it was really solid college guy, so they did need to replace him. And hopefully Will Honus can do it and be the running mate that Daniel Green needs because he obviously can play at a high level.
Yeah, that's the thing, and I feel like when you look at like the Alabama linebacker duo with Christian Harris and Henry To'oTo'o, they balance each other out very well too. Christian Harris is a linebacker who likes to get active, likes to get behind the line of scrimmage, kind of play a little bit more aggressive. Henry To'oTo'o is more of that solid Mike linebacker who's kind of a little bit more all over the field, less aggressive. That's kind of like the yin and yang I think you're looking for at that linebacker spot. Looking at the secondary, this is probably the most concerning unit on this side of the ball. They got two transfers coming in, a JUCO kid and Kobe Savage, and then Sean Robinson, who is a former top 150 recruit at Missouri, didn't play at all at Missouri, so he's kind of unproven. But you have two transfers coming in at the safety spot. That's a lot of question marks. They're going to need to figure out how to gel and how to gel early. I mean, in this fall camp because these guys are coming in the summer. Probably that's the biggest question mark is just how is that unit going to gel? But I think
it wasn't good. It wasn't really good enough last year. Honestly, They gave up a lot of. They didn't really. They just every pass that was in the air was pretty much completed. So it's.
I saw.
You want to get what right 70% or something.
Yeah,
like, that's too high for college.
Way too high. Way too high.
And they weren't like giving up just underneath passes. Like these are mid range or whatever you call it. And just playing a mix of a zone and a man. The zone, I feel like they gave up a lot. It was just guys were open. There were just holes. It was open.
Yeah, and so that's important. Like having that ability to gel early is going to be big.
And I mean, it might be good because you needed to replace what was there last year. At the end of the day, it just wasn't good enough. So
yeah,
probably not a bad thing to get some new faces.
That's kind of what I was thinking. Is like let's get some new faces in there. Let's take a look at their schedule really quick. DraftKings has them at a 6.5 win total. They open up against South Dakota. That should be a win. I think their biggest game is when Missouri comes to them the second week in Bill Snyder Family Stadium. That's going to be a big one to see what this Kansas State team is about. Missouri is a very, very beatable conference opponent. And seeing how they kind of
fare. Well, not non-conference, you should say, because obviously they're coming in from the SEC.
Can't keep that.
But
yep.
It did change from the past couple of years. But that is probably the kicker when you're a team like Kansas State, where you're probably going to go 500 or so in the division. Yeah, when you see your win total, it's probably going to come down to
some of those.
If you play a Stanford, if you play Missouri, if you play one of the Power 5 conference teams, that's more than mid to low level. Yeah, you need to win it. So,
and I mean, looking at how this plays out. South Dakota, Missouri, Tulane, 3 winnable games. If you can go into that Oklahoma game on the road 3-0, I'm not necessarily saying you're going to beat Oklahoma, although Kansas State has seemed to be Oklahoma's bugaboo in the past.
Yeah, they do play tough.
as good as those Oklahoma teams have been in the past, Kansas State.
This is a new Oklahoma.
It is a new Oklahoma, an Oklahoma that Dill absolutely believes in. But if we give them the loss there, they go to 3-1. They should take care of business against Texas Tech. I am not high on Texas Tech at all. They should be able to take care of business.
That's an interesting one. You don't know what because they basically just lost a good chunk of what they had with Breece Hall and the others.
Brock Purdy. Yeah, they are losing a lot. And so there's a couple winnable games here. Texas Tech, Iowa State, TCU. If they can grab two out of those 3 wins and get to 5-2, Oklahoma State will be a tough one. Texas will be a tough one. Baylor will be a tough one. Those are kind of – you get 2 of them at home, and then you got –
Those 2 back halves will be tight. Not Kansas, but Kansas or West Virginia will be it. And it's not a game that they can look over, but –
Yes. After this TCU game, if they can go 5-2, having their homecoming weekend, they probably don't beat Oklahoma State, but I think they certainly have a shot. Say they drop these 3 games to go to 5-4. These 2 games are going to be big. You gotta pick up your win against West Virginia, and you gotta pick up your win against Kansas. That should be a freebie. A 7-4 season or 7-5 season, would be a solid season for this Kansas State team. You obviously cash your prop bet on the win total, a bowl game, and some just continued progress for this Kansas State program.
7-8 wins is a good number for Kansas State every year. I think if they can hit like 10, where maybe Colin Klein took them that one year, or when you get some real magic. But 7-8 is really, really good season.
And that is like what a lot of fans say is like that's you want to have a respectable, good program so your recruiting stays the same, and then you hit that magic. That's kind of what Wake Forest did. Hung around 6-6, 6-6, 6-6, and then you get your star quarterback back. You get a bunch of talent on the wide receiver spot. You kind of run into the year where you can create a little bit of magic. That's what you're looking
for. ACC and just hope you can, kind of run it.
And this Big 12 is going to look a lot different in a couple years. And so Kansas State has that ability to kind of position themselves as kind of in the driver's seat of that Big 12 conference. And this season will be big. If you can get 7-5, you can be 8-4. I think that kind of puts them in a good position in the Big 12 going forward. So that's a review on this Kansas State team. Biggest question marks, I think, is that depth on defense. If they can just have a solid defense, I'm kind of optimistic on what Adrian Martinez can do with the new OC and Colin Klein. We'll see what they can do. Once again, we appreciate you guys for always rocking with the ROC Boys, checking out our season previews. If you guys do like the content, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We appreciate all the football talk that you guys have in the comments. Let us know what players we're missing out on. Obviously, you guys are the experts on Kansas State. We're just giving you our thoughts and opinions on that team. Appreciate you guys watching. We'll talk to y'all later.